Hello, guys. Welcome to another fresh and exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Lisa Lacey, a writer, trauma educator, and author of the upcoming memoir, Notes from a Certified Mad Woman. Along with his companion, field guide, The Psychology of Performance. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, my friend. It's an honor to be here. Always love having these conversations where we can get into the nuance of these topics.
All right, Lisa, thank you for coming to my show. So, I would love you to add a little bit to my introduction.
Well, my name is Lisa Lacey. Like you said, writer, trauma educator, executive advisor. Have a very long story. If you guys are interested in hearing more about it, you can always hit my website. I do have a memoir called Notes from a Certified Madwoman, launching in pre-sale in October. And then we'll launch fully November 1st.
All right, thank you so much. So, let's get into the questions I have here for you. Lisa, like I said, when I'm speaking, you mute so you don't get the echo.
Perfect. Thank you, my friend.
Okay. So, when you use the term high functioning survivor, what does that actually mean? Like, what does that look like in women's everyday lives that most people might miss?
Well, the reason I think it gets missed so much is because it can look like a lot of success. You know, I had all the things that you aim for, right? If you get the 6-figure income and you have the house and the cars and the toys and the free time even and the perfect polished family, blended family, all the perfect socials that people think is the dream, right? But in reality, having all of those things did not mean I was not suffering behind the scenes. So it's easy to miss because high functioning survival can look like a lot of success from the outside, but from the inside, it can certainly be a quiet, silent, solitary unraveling.
Okay, so much of your work touches on identity and masking. How do performance and holding it together become survival strategies rather than choices?
Well, as a child, I think a lot of these adaptations, so survival becomes adaptation, and then the adaptation becomes our identity. In other words, what we needed to do to get by or what we needed to do to survive our environment, instead of us saying, well, that's what I needed to get through that season, we go, oh, this is who I am. So that's how survival turns into adaptation, turns into identity. And many times this can begin as early as childhood. I know for me, I was a stage performer from the time I was 5 years old, a competitive dancer, then a competitive cheerleader, then a competitive actress, and straight A student. And what you would, again, from the outside, what looked like, oh, this is the perfect kid, when in reality, I was suffering then too. Why I was doing all of that was in the hope that somebody would truly see me, in the hope that I would finally be accepted by family members who just didn't have the skills to do it because of their own very severe traumas and lack of tools as parents. So my identity masking of high performing started very, very, very young, and it still didn't get me the things that I wanted. As a matter of fact, what would happen then is those things, those high performing things, the straight A's, the captain of teams, instead of being, hey, I'm proud of you, good job, I support you, it became an expectation. And I think so many times we perform things like the good girl, we perform the people pleaser, we perform the strong one, and nobody knows that we're struggling too. And then those things become expectations of us from others. So it can start as early as childhood or early adulthood based on our relationships and what our needs are in those relationships. And if those needs aren't getting met, then it is our humanness to try to adapt to get those needs met in sometimes not so great coping skills.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa, for that answer. So, we have experienced addiction and psychosis firsthand. How did those experiences reshape your understanding of yourself and the direction of your life?
Well, what I realized in recovery was that I had a lot of shame attached to going into a full blown mental health psychosis. And there is no shame in having mental health struggles, yet we attach so much to it. And for high performing women, I think it's even worse because we don't want to admit we're struggling. And sometimes we don't even have language for the fact that we're struggling because we're so busy doing everything. And what addiction recovery taught me was that I had spent years in self hatred and self deprecation without even realizing it. I had a very nasty inner critic that was judging me harder than anyone could judge me. And some of that was other people's voices, stuff I heard as a child, stuff I heard in my first marriage. Some of it was my own voice. But so recovery has taught me that when you like yourself, when you dig who you are as a human, just like, I'm a pretty cool human. I do my best. I try my best to be a good person, and I try my best to do a little bit better every day. And when that's enough, things really start to shift for you because you can do this healing work all day long. And it does not mean, my friend, that life stops happening. Life, like right now, life is hectic for us externally. There's stuff going on, but at the end of the day, I like myself. So I'm not going to self-sabotage. I'm not going to destabilize, and I'm not going to self-destruct.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. So, what inspired you to write Notes from a Certified Madwoman and create the companion field guide?
Well, the companion field guide came from having early readers take a look at it, and they saw pieces of themselves in some of my story. And so we wanted a softer place for them to land. So we created the companion field guide for should the memoir bring something up within you, something you experience, something you need to work through. There's reflective exercises, there's grounding exercises, there's a lot of tools and resources available in the companion field guide. In terms of the memoir and why this memoir is the first one to get launched, because there's a couple of memoirs coming right behind it, is because I suffer from a congenital blood disease. It's very high risk, life threatening. I'm a bit of a medical anomaly. My doctors are just like, wow, you're still here. I'm like, yep, I'm still here. But back at the beginning of the year, I had another near death scare with clotting, major clotting in my right lung, and a new diagnosis of lupus pancreatitis, both extraordinarily painful. And in the past, when this has happened, the many times this has happened, and mind you that these episodes will take people out 30 to 50% of the time from one event in one lung. And there have been times when I've had massive clots in both lungs. But when it's happened in the past, I just say I get discharged from the hospital on a Wednesday. By Monday, I was back to work. Like, no big deal. Nothing happened. I'm fine. We're moving on. And I was able to do that then. But this time, when it happened, I was discharged from the hospital and then turned the big 50 shortly after. And the mean age of existence with this disorder is 54. And I turned 50, or was turning 50. And we had big plans, and there was going to be a big party and a lot of people. And I mean, it's half a century old. It's a big thing to celebrate. And after getting out of the hospital, I told everybody to screw off. I was going off by myself to the mountains with my 21-year-old Italian Greyhound, who I've had since he was 3 months old. He is a little witness that has seen the trajectory of a life I am just now figuring out myself. I think he probably has it more figured out than I do. But I went to the mountains, a cabin in the mountains by myself. I got there on Monday, and I turned 50 on Wednesday. And I was sitting on the couch in the sunroom overlooking a very beautiful mountain view with the sun over the mountains, and crying. I was just bawling. I was grieving. I was grieving the performances. I was grieving the roles I played. And I got brutally honest with myself. I took inventory. I did a deep excavation and decided I do not want to leave and transition from this experience with these stories locked inside of me. And in terms of notes from a certified mad woman, and the title came about because it always makes people giggle when they say it. And also, it's very, very true on paper. I am certifiably insane. But I felt like this story needed to be the one to be told first. It was the story that was wrapped and shrouded in the most guilt and shame. So it needed to come out as a catharsis for me. But it's also an insider's perspective on the psychiatric arena as a psychiatric patient. And my hope is, as I've seen in early readers that are clinicians, that there will be some reform within the mental health care system, because being institutionalized, I have seen a lot of inhumane behavior in the name of helping people. And there's a lot of shame and guilt. There's a lot of labeling, and there's a loss of dignity when you are institutionalized. You are treated as a number, you are treated as paperwork, and very seldom are you actually treated as a human being. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement in the mental health care system across the board, actually, but very specifically in institutions that are supposed to be there to help people stabilize after having a destabilizing experience.
So, in your view, when women stop performing wellness and start telling the truth about their inner lives, what tends to surface?
Well, I think there's a sense of freedom that comes from it, really. And what it takes is this. The step one is being honest with yourself. And I think that's the hardest part. Taking inventory and looking around at the different arenas in your life and going, am I content here? And I try to stay away from the word happy. I think happiness is something that kind of ties into a little bit of toxic positivity, and it's a very high vibration on David L. Harkin's map of consciousness. It's hard to attain consistently, but we can reach levels of contentment and levels of satisfaction and a willingness to feel better and change and curiosity about what's coming next instead of catastrophizing our future because we're so used to things going wrong on us. So I think the biggest thing that comes from dropping the performances, dropping the masks, is not only a sense of freedom, but it avoids surprises. If you're a mom and you've tied every part of your being into being a mom, and, when it comes time for your kids to leave the house and you've lost yourself in it, it's going to hit you harder. So I think if we are really standing in who we are in all the places that we love, care about, and serve others, then there's going to be less disappointment and a lot more personal freedom.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. All right, so moving on, you have worked in trauma-informed education within recovery settings. What's something you have learned about addiction that most people misunderstand?
I have a different philosophy about addiction. I don't adhere to the disease model of addiction. I simply couldn't do that long term. I didn't want to, on top of having a congenital blood disease, believe my brain was going to be sick for the rest of my life. So there are a lot of scientific models out there that look at addiction as bad coping skills, destructive habits that can be changed if we reframe our thinking around them and find healthier substitutes for them. So after spending many years in 12-step programs, I outgrew them and found other sources for recovery. And there are so many. There's Smart Recovery, which takes a brain science approach. There's Celebrate Recovery, which is a different Christian approach. There's Dharma and Refuge Recovery, which takes a Buddhist approach. So there are so many other recovery options out there that I don't think a lot of people know about. So what I learned from teaching emotional intelligence in trauma and addiction recovery centers across the state was that recovery is not one size fits all. And if what you're doing isn't working, what we tend to do is blame ourselves. Oh, well, I didn't do it right. And then the shame comes and then the guilt comes. And my fear is that we lose people. They give up, they go back out instead of just going, okay, that didn't work for me. Maybe I'm built and designed differently and need something else. So I'm going to try something else. So I always tell people to rest as needed, always one more day. And if it didn't work for you, maybe it's not you. Maybe you just need a different system or modality. And my goodness, there are so many out there between the clinical therapeutic arena and transformational coaches now. There are so many options for healing. So do some research and dig around and find something that you think might actually be fun for you. Fun and laughter can go a long way to helping you find out who you became underneath all the survival patterns.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much for that wonderful answer. So, tell us what it costs emotionally, physically, and psychologically for a woman to survive a life she was never allowed to be honest about.
It can cost you your life. It really can. Literally and figuratively, it can cost you experiences that you'll miss out on because you're not living your authentic self underneath all the roles and the patterns. And for some people, it can lead to them just not wanting to do life this way. So, dropping the roles, dropping the patterns, dropping the performances, and just saying, you know what? I'm not doing well. Tell yourself that first. And then find somebody that's safe that you can talk to. And if it needs to be your journal first, journal it first, but make sure the first person you go to open up to, if you've been silent for years, has proven by history through their actions that they will show up in support of you and be inspiring and be encouraging. Because what can happen if you pick the wrong person to go to for the first time and they end up, in judgment or trying to fix you, then it may shut you down permanently and you may not open up to another person. So step one is brutal honesty with yourself. Take that inventory, do that excavation. And step two is finding a safe person to talk to. Sometimes just admitting it, because observation is not neutral. That's quantum physics, it's quantum mechanics. Once you observe it, it's already beginning to change for you. Acknowledgement is 75% of the work. And then you and that safe person can determine what next steps are for you to truly live that life of freedom and joy and laughter.
All right, Lisa. Here is my final question for you. What is that one question you wish I would have asked you?
Um,
Um,
what do you do
what do
if
you
you're
do if you're
stuck?
stuck?
What advice would I have for people that are listening to this and they're like, screw this, I don't like it. I don't like where life is headed. I don't like where life is at. And again, I'm going to circle back to that rest thing. Resting when we need to, especially for high performers, is so important. And rest without guilt. See, that's the trick. Because many of us will lay down to rest, take a midday nap if we can, take a nap when we get home, rest our bodies for 30 minutes of meditation. But it's not really rest because in our head, we're looping on, I should be doing this or I should be producing this. So be mindful not to tie your worth to what you can produce and practice just being. Can you be still with yourself and enjoy your own company, but rest without guilt if you feel stuck? And then answers and clarity will come.
All right, Lisa. So thank you for bringing language to experiences that so many people live through, but rarely know how to name. Your work opens up space for honesty, complexity, and compassion in conversations around trauma, survival, and identity. Lisa, how can my audience connect with you and learn more about what you do?
It's
It's
really
really
easy.
easy
You just go to
to
www.lisalacy.com.
www.lisalacy.com.
All my
All my
socials are
socials are
there.
there.
You can
You
get
can
on
get
the
on the
pre-sale
pre-sale
list for
list
the
for the
book
book
and
and
find out how
find
to
out how
work
to
with
work with
me.
me. All right, Lisa, thank you so much once again. She has said if you want to connect with her and get our upcoming book as well, we'll be also be online. So you follow our work and you're able to know when the book is going to be out as well. So, Lisa, I want to say thank you for coming. I also want to say thanks my audience for tuning in and for listening.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
It's
much.
been an
It's been
honor,
an
my
honor, my
friend.
friend. Have a wonderful day.